is double click on the background here in Photoshop, and let me just have a look in my Photoshop files folder here. I've got an MXF file that is taken from a short film I directed recently called Strong Heart, and we've got a street scene here, and you'll notice when you open a video clip in Photoshop, this timeline panel should appear. If yours isn't set up to come on, just click on the window menu and you'll see timeline down here towards the bottom of the list. Now again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this panel because I think most of these controls are going to be pretty familiar to you. You've got a video track, you can add audio if you want. Now by default, on this timeline here, you see I can scrub through and look at my content, and any changes I make are kind of going to be like old school rotoscoping. I'm going to be working on one frame at a time. I don't want to do that. I want to apply effects that apply to the entire piece. So I'm going to go to the filter menu and I'm going to choose convert for smart filters and just say OK, and this is going to convert my video clip into a smart object. I suppose you'd say a smart object is a kind of a virtual file. You can step into it and make adjustments to it, but any filters that you apply are applied overall to the entire thing. Now that I've done that, check this out. I can go to my filter menu and maybe I'll choose lens correction. Now this media was shot with the Sony f55 and it's a pretty good set of prime lenses we had, so we're not suffering from too much lens distortion. But I could very easily maybe choose a particular camera, choose a model, here's the 5D, maybe choose one of the standard lenses, and you can see as I choose these different lenses, Photoshop is making adjustments for me in the picture. And this is just fantastic because these are actually based on the profiles for the individual lens models you can get for these cameras. So you don't have to work it out. Photoshop is going to do it for you. In fact, I'll just cancel out of this and look under my filter menu. You'll notice that under blur, I've got a few extra blur options here: field, iris, and tilt. Now I'm going to go for, well, let's have field blur first of all. And this takes me into a special interface in Photoshop for dealing with these three particular kinds of blur. And if I just select this item, see I can specify how much blur I get overall in this image. I'm going to turn this off for a second because what I really want to look at is this iris blur. I think this is fantastic. I'm just going to expand this out a little bit and I'm going to pull this out. Let's just expand a little and expand the corners a little and straighten this out, pull this radius, and you can see what I'm doing is softening all of the image except this region that I've got in sharp focus. In fact, if I go back to this field blur, let me turn this off a second and turn back on the field blur. What's great about the field blur is that you can click and click and click and add multiple regions that you want to be in focus. Now let's say these foreground items, well, they're out of focus anyway, but let's say I really want to soften them. All I have to do is crank up this dial and expand out this circle a little, and you can see I'm increasing the blurriness for this section of my picture. Let's pull this out of the way a little bit so you can see. Excellent. And click OK, and that's then applied to my entire video clip. In fact, if I just press Control or Command O and open up another video clip here, just quickly to illustrate this, again I'm going to go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, OK. I really can apply any effect. Now this is just a shot I took in Venice recently. I can go to the Filter menu and I can perhaps choose Pixelate. I'll maybe go for Crystallize here. And you can see if I make these pretty big pieces and click OK, I'm now getting this very, very stylized result from my original video. I've maybe gone a little bit too far with this. I can just double click, go back in, bring down the cell size a little bit, click OK, and I've got a little bit more clarity in my picture. Now if I'm happy with the results, I can just go to File and Export, Render Video, and I've got a series of what should be fairly familiar options to you. You see I've got the Adobe Media Encoder. As an option, I can choose an image sequence if I like, that works too, but if you choose the Media Encoder, you've got your presets available and you can render out to produce a file that you can then work with in an application like Premiere Pro or After Effects. So working with Photoshop isn't just a question of having support for the Photoshop document file type inside of your editing application. It can also work the other way. You can take your video work right in here, you can work with your adjustment layers, you can work with animation on this timeline. You've got a lot of flexibility to work with video files right inside of Adobe Photoshop.